Joining us right now is Eric Dezenhall. He's the chairman of Dezenhall Resources. And Eric, this has been a bit of a tour de force, you might say, since Elon Musk has gotten so attacked for the anti-Semitic post that he retweeted and kind of commented on a couple of weeks ago. What did you think of this visit? What did you think of what he said? Because his commentary there was pretty moving.
Good move. I mean, Elon Musk is able to get meetings that most of us can't. He's the richest man in the world, one of the most powerful. Being able to get a meeting with the prime minister of Israel in the middle of a war is pretty impressive. And I think a certain percentage of his advertisers, what they're kind of looking for is some body language that he's still alive and kicking. As we talked about last time, there's always been this career death watch around Musk that never happens. He beats it every time. And I do think that this was a powerful visit. It may not, it certainly won't cure things with everybody, but I do think it's going to help cauterize things with a certain percentage of advertisers.
He tweeted himself, just as he was arriving, actions speak louder than words. What do you take out of that?
Well, I think people know. I mean, it's sort of like Donald Trump. People know that not everything he says is to be calibrated at the value of the actual words. I mean, Elon Musk, I think most people assume, is probably more of a troll than he is an anti-Semite. People know that when Donald Trump one day says, yeah, I know mobsters, and the next day he says, I've never met a mobster, that's just what he does, and it's kind of built into his stock price. So I think people are saying, watch what I do. Do you seriously think a real anti-Semite would go to Israel? Now, well, the answer is we don't know what he is inside, but it is a very powerful gesture. Now, what this won't do is we have to keep in mind that a certain percentage of his critics really don't care about the anti-Semitism. They want to knock him off because they don't like his politics, and anti-Semitism is an excuse to do so. The other thing I think we have to keep in mind is that anti-Semitism doesn't have the radioactivity that racism does. And so Musk is a smart guy. These advertisers are smart people. They may know that you can never come out and say that anti-Semitism doesn't carry the same weight as racism, but down deep they know it.
How much of the concerns about X are Elon Musk, and how much is just a concern about other postings on the site? I mean, if I'm an advertiser, I think about making sure that my ad is effective, that it's not hurting my brand, that I'm around things that are giving me a halo effect, not potentially damaging them. And this is about much more than what Elon Musk may have posted or reposted.
I think that's right. But there are ways to tell an advertiser, we are doing these three things to make sure it doesn't happen again. There's a quantifiable way to measure it, and then people can check to see if it's true. I think that that is something in the crisis management world where if you can quantify what you're doing, which is rare, you're going to calm a certain number of people down, just like if there is a product recall of a car, and you say, if you drive a Toyota Camry manufactured between 2017 and 2019 in the West Coast, bring your car in for a recall. Well, people can calibrate that. They can say, oh, well, I don't have that call. That's not my car. That's not my problem. So I don't have to worry about it. I think that the advertisers are going to be able to do that. I think what they're worried about is what is he going to tweet or X out next, and what is that going to mean investment-wise? What's it going to be if you manufacture a Tesla? Is the same thing going to happen to Tesla as happened to Mercedes in the 50s and 60s?
You know, Eric, there is a line that I think Elon could cross where he would be canceled, and I don't think he's crossed it yet. And I look at, when I look at the retweet, I look at the repost of what he had on a scale 1 to 10 for anti-Semitism. That was like I understand you can't say, look, because you did this, you've brought this upon yourself. You can never say that about October 7th. You can never say that. But on a scale 1 to 10, what I see on the average college campus in terms of anti-Semitism is about a 12. And what Elon Musk was saying at that point was, you know, if you embrace wokeness, one of the basic tenets of wokeness seems to be anti-Semitism. The far left seems to have they don't have a monopoly on anti-Semitism, but I think of those idiots in Charlottesville with the torches. How many of those, are there a lot of them around compared to what we're seeing on college campuses?
Right, but one is unacceptable and one isn't.
Both,
I mean,
why is the other one acceptable?
Because of ancient prejudices.
Oppressor oppressed.
Well, yes. I mean, I think we don't want to believe.
What's Susan Sarandon thinking? What is she explain
What she's thinking is that there is no risk. There is no risk. And when the fact that you can go on Instagram right now and see professors and their posts about Jews, the fact that you, Susan Sarandon, can do this, the fact that you have people ripping down posters.
Liberals, progressives, Eric, right?
But in their minds, they are doing something that is standing up to the man, and that is not considered a violation, or you wouldn't do it on camera. Remember, this stuff is happening on camera. Most racism that you see is somebody quietly saying to somebody over a few drinks what they secretly believe. This is not what people secretly believe. This is being filmed and people are not afraid to do it, which tells you what the baseline is. Elon Musk knows this, and I think that you're right. It was a boneheaded move for him to agree with somebody who made a boneheaded remark about what Jewish people are said to have engineered in some way.
Well, that's I've never even heard of that crazy conspiracy. So that one was a new one on me. But just saying, I don't understand why liberals are invariably more. That's
because.
Go ahead.
Because there has been in the university system a concept, a paradigm of oppressor and oppressed. It is very binary. People only understand that way. And because the Jewish community is perceived as having power, they must therefore be the oppressed, never mind the fact that Israel was occupied for 2,000 years. You're also combining that with an ancient prejudice. Whereas, certainly if somebody were racist or sexist 2,000 years ago, it would be a bad thing, but it didn't have the kind of sanction that it has since the 1960s. I mean, remember, you had United States presidents using certain epithets up until the 1940s or 50s, and even Lyndon Johnson said certain things in private, but it was in private. And I think what we're talking about here is people feel emboldened, and a lot of things come back to whether you feel emboldened. And when you are dealing with a client, somebody like Elon Musk, the rules, he doesn't think the rules are different for him. They actually are. Until sometimes they're not. He has not crossed that line. And even though some people reacted to what I said last week about there being this death watch of his career, that doesn't mean that death watch has happened. It means people want it to happen.